So let's talk about Afghanistan, the uncomfortable elephant in the room. After 20 years of pretending that we had either won in Afghanistan or were on our way to winning in Afghanistan, which we heard over and over and over again, we're finally leaving. And it's really, really ugly what's happening. It was never going to be pretty, right? I asked you earlier in the show, what's the crappiest sandwich you've ever eaten? Think about that. That's exactly what it is right now. It's a crap sandwich in Afghanistan. And by the way, that's why no president wanted that ugliness on his or her hands. So they just continued the war, right? Obama didn't want to end it because he didn't want to get ugly, right? Bush didn't want to end it because he didn't want to get ugly. Well, the New York Times reports this morning, as Afghanistan President Ashraf Ghani was planning his own exit from the country, that he was simultaneously pressuring President Joe Biden not to yank American embassy staff out, which would be interpreted as a vote of no confidence in the Afghan government. Now remember, this is the same guy that Team Trump picked to lead the former government. This is the same guy that Team Trump picked to lead the government. Former Taliban prisoner. You know, here he is meeting with them. Here's Mike Pompeo meeting with the leadership. So to be clear, Leader Pompeo basically picking the new government. And he ran away from his country as he was planning to run. He was basically running away from his country as he was and asking the United States to stick around and not leave the U.S. embassy, because that would be seen as a sign of no confidence in the government. So I'm leaving, but you guys stick around. Okay, you guys stay here.
They're afraid the world stage is going to be like, they surrendered. The United States surrendered to somebody. They surrendered to the Taliban.
Right.
How weak. How pathetic.
And the same generals who told a succession of American presidents that victory was just one more surge away around the corner, they kept these are the same generals that assured President Biden that there would be time for an orderly retreat.
A surge these generals, of what?
Well, I mean, a surge of additional troops, etc. But right, we're not putting additional people in there. What was the goal?
Like, do we even know? Were we ever told what is the goal? Is the goal to take down this government? Is the goal to take down the airport? Like, what the hell was the goal?
We never had a goal.
So
the goal was to. Well, I guess the original goal was to eliminate Al Qaeda, right? So what was this new goal? Well, so Team Biden was told by their generals, right, that there would be time for an orderly retreat to get us out of there. Then the Afghan army would be willing and able to slow down the Taliban's inevitable takeover, right? We have 350,000 people that we've trained for 20 years. They will be able to slow down the Taliban for this inevitable. They're going to take them over, and it's going to be inevitable, but it'll be enough time for us to get out of there, get the embassy staff out of there, get us all out, get our special immigrant visas to our Afghan allies, get us out, get the American troops out of there, all of it. They were wrong, and it's horrible. The tens of thousands of people who helped us are being left in danger. But we don't want to hear a damn word this morning. I don't want to hear a damn word about it from former Bush administration officials or former Trump administration officials. I don't want to hear from people like Nikki Haley, Mike Pompeo, or anyone else who helped set up this disaster in motion. Remember, this withdrawal was negotiated by Mike Pompeo, and he seems to have total amnesia about it. Like he was there. I'm literally looking at I have the document in front of me, which is in fact the surrender agreement. It's the letter from basically the signed agreement with the Taliban on drawing our troops down there and getting out. He seems to have total amnesia about this morning. So Mike Pompeo and other Trump administration officials have been taking to the airwaves over the past few days, writing opinion pieces, reminding us how they did it correctly and trying to rewrite history. So listen to Mike Pompeo. This is a ridiculous, laughable segment where he goes on Maria Bartiromo's show to basically rewrite the history that he, in fact, put in place, which was laying the groundwork for the Taliban takeover. Watch this.
Maria, thanks for having me on. Look, we were determined to get this right. There were two things that President Trump wanted to do. Everyone knows that President Trump wanted to get our young men and women back home. We began the march towards doing that, but we always knew that conditions had to be right to achieve that. And we had to have the situation on the ground right to do that. This administration just willy-nilly whipped the military out of there, leaving civilians, equipment, all of those things behind. We drew down from 15,000 or just over that to about 2,500, and we had kept the order that had been there, right? We didn't have this chaos. All the while, we took out 12,500 soldiers. When we got to that point, we went back, we looked at the conditions. We wanted to get those last numbers out, but we never found the conditions.
Yeah.
You know, that reminds me of something.
Pinocchio lying?
No,
I mean,
no. Watch this. Okay, watch this. Let me turn on my camera. I got such a thing to do here to turn on my camera. Okay, watch this here. Turn down the music.
I was the CIA director. We lied, we cheated, we stole. It was like we had entire training courses.
Let's applaud that.
Yeah,
let's
let's
lie,
applaud.
cheat, and steal.
Yeah, and they're still doing it.
Oh yeah, yeah. This was the manual for this, and now he's just on the air lying once again. So Pompeo lying about Afghanistan, for totally forgetting his involvement in the negotiations with the Taliban. His former Secretary of State blaming President Biden for chaos in Afghanistan. He complained a few days ago on Fox News. He said, who was laying the groundwork for a 2024 presidential run. Of course, we predicted this about a year ago here on the show that he was going to run for president. He says he argued that insurgents were taking over the country because we have an administration that has refused to adopt a deterrence model, the one that President Trump and I had. He claimed that he and Trump had kept Afghanistan stable and that they had never trusted the Taliban, and that thanks to their steely resolve, the Taliban didn't advance on capitals in Afghan provinces. None of this is true. Like many other Republicans who now profess anguish over the Taliban's victory, Pompeo supported the U.S. withdrawal, but he didn't just endorse the pullout, he directed it. He cut a deal with the Taliban to remove all American troops and to release Taliban fighters from Afghan prisons. He vouched for the Taliban's assurances, even as the insurgents staged hundreds of deadly attacks. So he at the time, during the Trump administration, the Taliban were carrying out deadly attacks.
Was it Chris Wallace that pushed him on this? Do you remember that interview? I think it was Chris Wallace was pushing back on that and asking. He's like, well, but that was different. We were,
Oh, yeah, they just spin whatever they want. I mean, they're just trying to rewrite history. And he defended the ongoing troop withdrawals because they were already drawing down troops, undercutting the Afghan government in its own talks with the Taliban. I mean, you have to remember, the Afghan government basically had no teeth because we were negotiating with the Taliban, not the Afghan government. So, of course, we were basically leaving them in the lurch as the militants started taking over capitals. This was what was happening. I mean, it was unbelievable. I mean, all of these things, he did neither. He had people who he had 2 years ago, Pompeo began pushing for a deal with the Taliban. War hawks urged him to stipulate in the agreement that the Taliban had to turn over al-Qaeda operatives. They also asked him to reject any demand for premature release of Taliban prisoners. He did neither. Under the deal that was signed in February 29, 2020, the U.S. government pledged to withdraw from Afghanistan all military forces of the United States and its allies and its coalition partners within 14 months. 14 months. That's exactly what happened. We already negotiated this with the Taliban. This was already happening. This rewriting of history is hilarious.
Right to do so. And so we continued to pound the Taliban when they violated the agreement.
You
When
didn't.
they moved on a checkpoint or moved in a place that they weren't permitted to, we used American power and made clear to the Taliban that there would be real consequences. What happened here, Maria, is you had a leader who was unprepared to do that. When the Taliban pushed on the Trump administration, we pushed back even harder and imposed real costs on them. When the Taliban pushed on the Biden administration, they withdrew to a commercial airport that in no way has the capacity to get our people out of there with the speed and alacrity that needs to happen to keep them safe.
American forces immediately after this agreement was signed began to vacate bases and to pull out. But the Taliban, contrary to its commitments, escalated the attacks under the Trump administration. Like this all was happening under the Trump administration, guys. Pompeo responded by making excuses. We have seen the senior Taliban leadership working diligently to reduce violence from previous levels. Really? So they're literally attacking us. They're attacking bases. They're taking things over as we pull out troops. And now it's Biden's fault? And you had nothing to do with this? Oh my God. And just look at this garbage from Nikki Haley. Nikki Haley pens an opinion piece. And by the way, who's letting her write pieces in the Washington Post? So the Washington Post just literally publishes this piece of garbage from Nikki Haley. They have a whole They have a whole fact-checking section, right? And you just let them publish this garbage?
Oh, wait, you didn't do that right, Clayton. You forgot this. Fact-checking.
Oh, right, fact-checking.
Yeah.
So here's the opinion piece Nikki Haley wrote for the Washington Post. Just look at this garbage. I mean, I don't know why they published this. Anyway, accusing the president of bungling the withdrawal, Haley demands he must not also bungle the coming decision on whether to recognize these barbarians as Afghans' legitimate government. Doing so would bring the United States even lower while raising up a regime that deserves nothing but scorn and isolation. She calls them barbarians?
I mean, we worked with and still continue to work with those barbarians.
Exactly.
They're not a terrorist organization. They're not listed as one at all.
Look at her. She's right. Well, here's Pompeo right here. Responded by making excuses. We have seen senior Taliban leadership working diligently to reduce violence from previous levels. I mean, he says, we still have confidence that Taliban leadership is working to deliver its commitments. And he said the critics were making too much of the latest attacks, these Taliban attacks, since violence in Afghanistan was common. Oh, okay. So Nikki Haley now calling them barbarians. But 3 years ago, when Donald Trump was negotiating with the Taliban, Nikki Haley congratulated him, saying, quote, the U.S. policy on Afghanistan is working. We are seeing that we are closer to talks with the Taliban and the peace process than we've ever seen before. And I think we really are going to work towards a peace process with the goal being that we do not want Afghanistan to be a safe haven for terrorism anymore.
But they weren't
It's
barbarians.
great that we're working. They weren't barbarians
back then because we were making money off of them, you know? Like the dollars were flowing, so...
Right. So Nikki Haley, back then, it's fine, right? It's totally fine. It's fine, and they're not barbarians, I guess. But now suddenly they are. So just on Sunday, Nikki Haley appeared on CBS's Face the Nation to spew more lies about her own party's role in legitimizing the Taliban. Listen to this.
Someone you know well, the former Secretary of State in the Trump administration, Mike Pompeo, stood alongside one of the Taliban founders and helped negotiate this deal in which President Trump signed an agreement to have United States forces out earlier this year. Did that set in motion what we're seeing now?
You know, I think everybody's wanting to go back and talk about Trump. The truth is, under 4 years of Trump, Afghanistan was safe. We made sure that we kept terrorism at bay and that we came from a strength of position. What's happened in 7 months of Biden is we've completely surrendered and we've humiliated ourselves in the eyes of the world. The thing is, there are times where you have to negotiate with the devil, but you negotiate with the devil from a point of strength. You don't do it from a point of weakness. We literally have no leverage right now with the Taliban. All we're going to see them do is they're going to buy time and act like they're going to be nice until August 31st. And then all of those women, all of those girls, everything is going to go back to the way it was.
You guys are so concerned about the women all of a sudden, aren't you? You're so concerned about the women and children. I love this. Play me a sad violin. I mean, give me a break. But you were okay. Were you okay with the women and children that you were bombing indiscriminately for years? You piece of garbage, Nikki Haley. Total garbage. Total garbage. The crap that she's spinning there. Total garbage.
Yeah. Like you don't care about the women and children that are killed every day in drone strikes and all over the world. Like those right. Women and children don't matter. It's only like what is your determining factor?
Give me a break. Give me an absolute break. Total garbage. The Taliban controlled so this is total garbage what she's spinning here. The Taliban controlled broad swaths of the country during the Trump administration and constantly staged deadly attacks on government troops. The Taliban were attacking government troops. Human Rights Watch reports that more than 700 civil servants, members of the judiciary, and politicians were killed in targeted attacks by the Taliban in 2020 alone. Who was president in 2020? Anyone in the chat know who was president in 2020? 700 people, members of the judiciary, politicians within the Afghan government, and 700 civil servants were all slaughtered by the Taliban. But they weren't. It was peaceful. She just told me it was peaceful. And they just want to keep going back and talking about Trump, she says. People just want to keep going back and talking about Trump. Is that it? Is that what we want to do?
Someone you know well, the former Secretary of State in the Trump administration, Mike Pompeo, stood alongside one of the Taliban founders and helped negotiate this deal in which President Trump signed an agreement to have United States forces out earlier this year. Did that set in motion what we're seeing now?
You know, I think everybody's wanting to go back and talk about Trump. The truth is, under 4 years of Trump, Afghanistan was safe.
I mean, you just lie. I mean, liars, liars, liars. Right?
Well, the thing is, like,
fire.
She's like, we have no position of strength, even though, like, she knows about our military. That, like, if we're always in a position of strength with the whole Middle East, because they can't do anything without us sticking our nose in it. And if we stick our nose in it and they don't do what we want, we kill them, we bomb them. That's leverage.
I mean, it's hilarious. It's absolute garbage. I mean, and you know, and the thing is, look, you know, naturally, Major Garrett, who was doing the interview, failed to point out that Trump had already given the Taliban everything that it asked for, including the release of 5,000 former fighters and a promise to begin drawing down troop levels immediately. Like, that's where the press fails, right there. Like, my question to her after she said that would have been, excuse me, Ms. Haley, no, that's incorrect. Your former boss basically gave everything the Taliban asked for, including 5,000 former fighters and a release and a promise to draw down troop levels immediately, which they did. They already started leaving. But she wouldn't answer that, and he didn't ask the question. Because the mainstream media is complicit in this mess. So what about all of these refugees, right? What about all the refugees in Afghanistan? But of course, Republicans don't want to talk about that, right? Since so many of them are opposed to resettling Afghan refugees in the United States, would put their lives at risk, right? All you need to do is watch conservative media and their xenophobia. We cannot have Afghans who now have no homes and their parents were killed living somewhere in the United States. You saw that Republican, literally, I forget who it was, when they showed that image of that aircraft that was filled with Afghan refugees. Meanwhile, this was from 2017, but no one pointed that out to this person. It was a Republican, some Republican congressman said, who's raising their hand and wants this airplane to land in their backyard, right? And you had all these people in the Twitter feed were like, we'll help, you xenophobic piece of garbage. But no, Republicans cannot handle we can't handle immigrants coming to the United States. We can't handle refugees in the United States. Our xenophobia keeps it, because you know what? They're going to bring disease. They're going to bring COVID. They're going to take our jobs.
Look at the videos. I don't see anybody in masks over there. Are they immune from COVID over there? It doesn't even look like it's affecting them. Like all these people in the streets and everything. Aren't the hospitals getting filled up with COVID patients and stuff? Like,
right. No, but we can't have Nikki Haley and Stephen Miller and Mike Pompeo and Trump. Like, we got to close our borders. So no wonder they don't want to talk about Afghan refugees. Now you're suddenly concerned about Afghan refugees, you lying sacks of garbage? Nikki Haley doesn't want to talk about the unpleasant choice either to let these people in the country or let them get slaughtered. And neither, by the way, does Stephen Miller, Voldemort Stephen Miller, who went on Laura Ingram's show to spin yarns. Watch this. I mean, this is equally hilarious. Stephen Miller, who I think is like the baby Voldemort, and then watch as this Afghanistan veteran just destroys Stephen Miller, a little whiny piece of, I'm so pissed off about this.
It's all of Americans' wallets.
No, and then the local communities pick up the tab for the education as well, which is very costly. But just
big time. Yeah, we can't have these immigrants coming in here and it's going to be all over the American people's wallets to take care of these people. Sure, we can bomb them for 20 years. We can go and invade their country for 20 years. But, these local communities, we can't have these people being educated in America. We can't even educate our own people. You're worried about educating Afghans? Give me a break. And guess what? They'll probably do better than your kids anyway. Punk. Little weasel.
Just to get to first principles here. The United States of America never, ever made a promise, written or unwritten, to the people of Afghanistan that if after 20 years they were unable to secure their own country, that we would take them to ours. That is nonsense. That has never been U.S. government policy.
What do you say to that?
That man has been my personal nemesis now for almost 8 years. I've been fighting him since he was Jeff Sessions' Senate staffer. As far as I'm concerned, he personally is as complicit as the Taliban in these people's deaths. He should be held accountable for war crimes. He spent the entirety of the Trump administration purposely trying to prevent these people from coming here. I've had meetings with him and his ilk. I brought the interpreter who saved my life to some of those meetings. We met with a lady by the name of Andrea Loving. She's the deputy counsel for the House Judiciary Committee for the GOP. Janice and I were sitting in a meeting with her. She is Stephen's counterpart at the time in Congress. And we were debating about whether or not Congress should allocate more visas for these people. She then articulated what his platform was. I pointed to Janice and I said, this is a gentleman who saved my life. Maybe you've just never had a chance to meet an Afghan. And so it helped to put a face to these people's names. And they looked at me and they said, you're doing nothing but letting Islamic fundamentalist terrorists into our country, and it's our job to stop you. Wrong. These are our people. There is no us and them. There's just an us. And you know what? Stephen Miller never wore a uniform a day in his life. He's a privileged little brat. He ought to be held for war crimes. I can't stand that man. I can't believe that you're even giving him any more airtime. That's the reason why that guy's views continue to get publicized, is because the media keeps putting him out there. That guy doesn't represent America. He represents the worst of us. What's going on right now, however, is the best of us. I'm currently involved with a massive airlift planning operation from my living room. There are veterans all over the country who are organizing a digital Dunkirk. We are not getting any sleep. We are determined to see our people get out, and we're not going to rest until we do it effectively and efficiently, and most importantly, until we take them all. But people like Stephen Miller need to just sit down and shut up, because he has been part of the problem for too long.
Wow. He's a former Trump advisor, Afghan veteran, who had his life saved by an Afghani. Here's the thing. So we should not give them quarter. We should not provide shelter for these people whose country we destroyed for 20 years. These innocent people, these children who, by the way, don't even know the beginning of this war. They're like, why are we in a war? I'm 3 years old. Mommy, can you explain to me why they're, these people have been here for 17 years and they're bombing us on a regular basis?
Honey, unfortunately, we don't know why they're here.
We can't explain that. So, they don't want to talk about this, right? What's amazing, though, is that the Republicans loved, even the Trump administration. If you went to the Republican website, if you went to the GOP's website just a short time ago, right before all of this withdrawal stuff started happening and the craziness happened where the Taliban overtook the airport, on the GOP's website, they proclaimed how President Trump has continued to take the lead in peace talks. He signed a historic peace agreement with the Taliban in Afghanistan, which would end America's longest war. The Trump administration signed a preliminary peace agreement with the Taliban that set the stage to end America's longest war. Under the agreement, the U.S. will withdraw nearly 5,000 troops in 135 days. The deal has been called the best chance to end this conflict, a decisive move towards peace and the best path in the United States. So, all of that right there on the Republican website, touting this amazing accomplishment of Trump and removing us from Afghanistan and removing all of these troops, which was already set in motion by them and this guy, right? And now they're totally forgetting about it. But guess what? If you go to the website today, if you try to go to the Republican website today and access that same article, suddenly you get this. They pulled the page down.
It looks as though you're as lost as Biden.
Yeah. So they pulled it down and put up a 404 error page. That page is now missing. I guess they're not as proud of the removal of American troops from Afghanistan and the peace agreement they signed with the Taliban. The Republican National Committee website has now completely erased it. It's amazing.
I mean, but signing a peace agreement with the Americans, that's just asking for it. You don't sign a peace treaty with us. We don't. What peace treaty have we ever kept? Name one. And you can start back with the Indians, the American Indians.
And all of these Bush era guys are coming out of the woodwork now. You know, we need to stay there. We were right. They're trying to rewrite history. All of these people coming out to rewrite history now. Don't let them fool you guys. Don't let them fool you. You know, we'll tell you the truth here because we're not run by the mainstream media. We're not taking money from billionaires to lie to you like the mainstream media is. Love how, and also now what you're going to watch, here's my next phase of this, guys. This is exactly what's going to happen next in this debate about Afghanistan and why we need to go back into Afghanistan, why we need to send thousands of troops back into Afghanistan as a permanent sort of security force in Afghanistan. It's all about China. Everyone is you're starting to hear this. They're starting to babble about China, that they want to take America's place in Afghanistan, like that China now is seeing this as an opportunity. America's leaving. Hey, our big spooky foe, China, is now seeing this as a golden opportunity to swoop into Afghanistan. Like suddenly, like China's been sitting there as all of the world's powers have literally failed in Afghanistan for, I don't know, decades. And now China is going to want to have military interventionism in Afghanistan? Give me a break. What idiot? I mean, China's not stupid. China's sitting there going, yeah, this sounds like a great idea. Let's go into Afghanistan. But no, the mainstream media will try to say that. They've already been. If you've been watching the mainstream media, they're like, what? You know, China has got to be seeing this as an opportunity. And meanwhile, the G7 nations are meeting this week with President Biden, and they are apparently going to push Team Biden to go back into Afghanistan and keep troops there or push more troops into Afghanistan. The G7 nations are going to push us back in there. The warmongering West wants us back in there once again.
Well, and somebody just asked a good question, like when was the last time we've actually declared war? So the thing is, like, all of these things that we are in are basically
Korea.
conflicts because we are not in war. Congress is never. So the last time Congress passed joint resolutions saying that a state of war existed was on June 5th, 1942, when the U.S. declared war on Bulgaria, Hungary, and Romania. Since then, the U.S. has used the term authorization to use military force, as in the case against Iraq in 2003. So none of these are wars. These are conflicts.
I thought it was Korea.
No.
I thought it was Korea. Yeah, that's what Ron Paul was railing against in that video we showed the last week on the show. You know, he's like, they're not wars. You know, we don't have any authorization. They don't ask Congress for authorization to go. We just do this thing. And then we never end it. And don't let these guys rewrite history. You know, you go to the Republican website and try to find this page where they praise Trump for his removal of Afghanistan and the drawdown and peace agreement with the troops. And then a few days later, go to the website. And this is all you get. I guess they're not so excited about it anymore. Trying to rewrite history. America. Thanks for subscribing to the channel. You can also become a channel member by going to morninginvest.com/join, where you can stick it to the mainstream media and support independent journalism. We're able to bring you the stories that you won't see on any of the major billionaire-backed networks. Thanks so much. We'll see you next time, everyone.